Hello and welcome to Be Indie Now, a podcast about independent game development. I'm your host, Tobiah Marks, and with me today is Felix Rieseberg. Hi, Felix.
Hey, how are you?
Pretty good. So you make a game called Awesome Zombie Sniper, right?
Yeah, it's a tiny game, but I really enjoyed building it.
So tell me about the game. What is it?
It's a pretty dumb game. The full story is that I just wanted to get into game development. It's the first game that I completely built end to end. And when I started getting into it, I was thinking about possible things I could do. I knew I wanted to do something in 3D. I've never done anything in 3D before, and I knew I probably wanted to shoot things. And because you very quickly realize that artificial intelligence is pretty damn hard, I went for the pretty popular zombie trope. So it is called Awesome Zombie Sniper, and it's about as much as the title promises. I'm giving you waves of zombies, and that is essentially it. Once you killed all the zombies, I'm giving you more zombies.
So you like roam around a field or a city, and it's kind of open world, right?
It's not really an open world. It's very very condensed levels. Right now I have three of them. There is one that I call the Lonely Forest. Then there's another one which is a tiny city scene that has a bunch of streets and a bridge. And then there's a third one I just recently added, which is an autumn field. And something I want to release within the next 2 weeks. That level is still being designed. Is kind of a winter scenery, which would be the fourth level. But it's pretty simplistic. I think the art looks pretty good because I managed to buy decent art. So many of the models and many of the objects and the textures look pretty fancy and swanky.
So you didn't do any of the
but
art yourself?
I did some of the art myself, but most of the art I would actually say more than 60% I just straight out bought.
What stuff did you do yourself versus buying?
Textures, a bunch of animations, and some very light modeling, like tiny, teeny, tiny objects, like a couple of rocks. And I modified some of the trees. I actually did some trees myself. But the things that are really difficult and really hard, like getting a good matching ground texture, making sure that the world somewhat fits. My zombies look amazing. Those things are all 100% outsourced. Because I'm a developer. And while I do know how to use Photoshop, and I might even be fine with using Blender and a couple of other 3D programs, actually getting into hardcore Maya is not really my thing.
So did you buy them off? You used the Unity to make the game, right?
I did use Unity,
So
yes.
did you buy those other assets off the asset store? Or did you work with another artist, like one to one?
I did buy most of the things off the asset store. There are a few tiny things where I just outsourced them using Odesk or a couple of other connections. I still have a bunch of artists back in Europe that I worked with in previous jobs, so those are the ones I sometimes work with. But in general, the Unity Asset Store is probably one of the best ecosystem elements I've ever seen in my life. The quality of assets on there is outstanding. The size of the market keeps the price pretty much down. There's high competition between individual artists, and in general, I'm very, very happy.
Yeah, definitely. It's really useful. So you haven't done any other Unity stuff before. This was your first game project.
It actually started being my Hello World, like very slowly. Obviously, all the code that was originally in the Hello World has been rewritten, but that is really my very first project.
Cool. So how many hours did you work on it?
Oh my God, probably more than a professional game developer would.
But it's okay if
So
you
from
worked a lot more because you were learning how to use Unity at the time. But are we
yeah,
talking like 10 hours of work, 100 hours of work, 1,000 hours of work? What kind of range are we talking here?
probably not 1,000, probably not 1,000. If I had to guess, I obviously didn't run the clock, but if I had to guess, probably around 300 hours. I think that is realistic. Yeah, I think that is realistic. Now that I think about it, that is a good number. But at the same time, many of those hours, as you said, right, it's not just learning, it's also trying things out, thinking about whether or not I want to include something, and also coding many, many things that really you wouldn't have to code yourself. And that can be really basic things, right? So if you think about a game engine, there is a whole bunch of physics stuff I'm doing myself, mostly because I wanted to learn how someone would do it, or
something that people in Unity keep talking about is the first-person controller or a third-person controller, which is essentially the script and all the scripts and all the code that is responsible for moving your character, moving the camera around, maybe having shaky effects, jumping up and down. Because, fun fact, and Tobiah probably knows this because he's the real game developer in the show, but...
You're a real game developer, too. You've made a game. That makes you a real game developer. That's the only criteria to entry.
That probably counts, right? 500,000 players, and most of them have no clue how clueless their developer is.
500,000 players is really, really impressive.
It's a free game, right? With a free game, you easily get a bunch of players. But what I actually wanted to say is the first thing that I found fairly amazing is that apparently and that is something I learned early on during building this game, if you're building a first-person shooter or third-person shooter, usually, even if you have a fairly sophisticated physics engine, the player itself would usually not be a part of the physics engine because you actually want the player to not behave according to the rules of physics, even if you did a pretty good job at abstracting real physics into your game engine. So I did all those things myself, and I think normally you would just buy some ready-made first-person shooter asset because really the way first-person shooters work across the board is fairly similar. So you're totally fine with just spending, like $10, $15 on the asset store and going with a good script there.
So doesn't Unity have some physics stuff built in?
Yeah, physics is pretty good. I think physics is pretty amazing in Unity. The included scripts for, I would actually say the included scripts that come with Unity, all of them are, I think you very quickly want to write some yourself or buy something off the asset store. Don't really find too many examples. But the only thing I found, for instance, there's an included first-person control thingy that is... how to say this? One of the things is that you can turn it too far and controlling it, and it's just a bit fiddly. For instance, if you try to include touch controls, which I had to do because they're currently a requirement for Windows 8, if you include touch controls, it's fairly difficult to make sure that you're first-person controlled, that the camera itself behaves in the right way. They're just... It's probably too boring to go into those details, but the included script are not as good as something you would write yourself because you're just lacking the complexity and the code isn't as well documented as you would expect it from something you buy off the asset store. So in total, the physics engine Unity comes with is fantastic and outstanding. The thing is amazing, and once you write your first things and you build your first explosions and you use methods that are named something like at explosion force, and you have buddies swirling around according to explosional force, that is super cool, and you start giggling like a little kid. But the included scripts themselves, you probably end up writing yourself what you actually want to achieve.
So did you download any scripts from the asset store, or did you write pretty much everything yourself plus what was included in Unity?
I did download a whole bunch of scripts. For my own game, I ended up writing the whole thing basically myself. There is one thing called UFPS, Ultimate First Person Shooter, and that is an amazing script. It does way more than I'm doing in my game. For instance, if you run in a shooter, if you run in any of the modern shooters, you can buy like Call of Duty or Battlefield or any of the major titles today. If you run, you have that light camera shake. Do you know what I'm talking about? That left and right thing. Yeah. So I don't have that, but UFPS has that. And those things are hard, or a system where you pick up stuff and all those things. If you do them right, you can do fairly amazing things. I ended up not using them, mostly because, this was a pretty big learning experience for me, and I don't think you really learn a lot if you just plug and play a whole bunch of scripts together. And the second part is, I still believe that if you want full flexibility, writing it yourself, you just understand exactly what is happening if you're writing it yourself. And trying to understand someone else's script sometimes takes as much time as just writing it yourself.
Yeah, and especially if you're trying to learn in this project and it's your first one, it's nice to kind of tackle it yourself because you'll understand it so much better.
Yeah, I don't know. How did you guys manage that? I don't actually know if you already talked in the show about your game, but you have some pretty decent game development experience yourself. How did you handle those things?
Yeah, I mean, like we sometimes... I'm sure we've probably referenced some code somewhere of like looking up some idea, but we never really took like anything beyond maybe a function from at a time, and mostly it's just writing ourselves and figuring it out, and especially because we were using the Corona game engine, and when we were using it, it was pretty new at the time, so pretty much even if we were wanting to copy some logic from something, we were converting it to Lua and ended up rewriting it line by line anyway.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm doing some, to be completely fair, there are some things that I use scripts for, JSON, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. So if you write a game for Windows 8 today, even if you use Unity, you have to use some platform-specific code. Unity is great and all, but it's not actually that you write once and deploy it everywhere. You have to adjust some minor things for the different platforms you want to work with, right? If you think about the iPhone, if you want to use messaging inside the iPhone, you have to use iPhone-specific code. The same goes for Android, and obviously the same things apply to Windows. And for instance, I'm using a JSON library because that is the type of stuff you don't build yourself. Like,
why bother?
Taking JSON apart, you just take a whole bunch of freeware code that's out there, some kind of amazing .NET library someone else once wrote, and take that. But yeah, I think I mostly did everything myself. And down the road, the nice thing as well is if you want to add additional features and you find that your code isn't flexible enough, you can easily change it, and you don't really break anything. It's all under your control.
So from that first sitting down and wanting to do Hello World to releasing in the App Store, how much time is that? Like you said, 300 hours, but like, is that over a period of 3 months, a year? How long did that take?
Oh no, way less than a year. I mean, I think I released sometime in October, actually. So that went fairly quickly. I mean, the other thing to note is that if you think about the Windows Store right now, and obviously full disclosure here, Tobiah and we both work for Microsoft, right?
Yes, that's correct.
I just want to do full disclosure here, but as it stands
both evangelists
today,
as well, yes.
Yeah, but as it stands today, the huge benefit you have is the very first version I released was very, very basic. It had one level, it had a super simple menu. There were no options whatsoever. The touch controls were horrible. They still are horrible. But you're looking at the gigantic amount of users, and I was the very first-person shooter. I actually think the first shooter at all. And if you just deliver something very simple for free and people like it, it's very easy to gain a huge number of users. And the second thing I did is that was actually you, Tobiah, right? I think that I remember that we met at a conference, and I told you that I have X amount of users. I think there was 200,000, and you told me, "Holy shit, snacks, 200,000! You got to get some advertisements in there." And I remember that the very same weekend I sat down and put some advertisements in there, and woke up the next morning.
Monetization like at all when you first started, right? Or did you have the purchasing weapons in at the beginning?
I had the purchasing weapons in, but to be completely frank, I think I blew that up. So tales of messing with things, right? So number one is when I released the game, I got the first big spike in users. So I got on the front page of the store, because the way the Windows Store works is that if you get enough people to like your game initially, there's this category with trending. New and Rising is it's named. So I got a bunch of people who liked the game and gave it 5-star ratings.
Oh, yeah, you're very pretty, and you're one of the first shooters on the Windows 8 store, so you got noticed really easily. You stood out over the competition.
Yeah, but the very first version that was released that many of my first initial players used, I had a small math error in there, like literally something dumb. I think I didn't use parentheses correctly. So you could gain all the weapons with game credits that you earn in the game, I think, with like a bunch of plays. Like if you invested 10 minutes, you got the whole range of weapons immediately. Like boom.
Yeah, because you have a virtual currency that gets you, you can either purchase them with the currency or you can spend real money on the weapons. So you were not seeing very many sales. Did you fix that? Is it now harder to earn currency?
It's still easy, and quite frankly, I'm not super happy with the state of the gaming industry. I'm a huge gamer myself. I just enjoy gaming, and I still think that if you have a game that is marked as free, right, most of the game actually should be free. Otherwise, you shouldn't use the word you should say that it's a demo and you can extend it or something. So you can still get everything for free. You don't have to pay a single cent. And the other thing is nothing is really outlandishly difficult, because I see a bunch of games that use that. You can get everything in the game if you play for 5 years straight, right? Which is that's just I'm not doing that. It's a very simple game, so you can get the guns very easily. And my people are still not really. I think I got like 20 people buying a gun, like.
Like 20 people total?
Yeah, I think in total. So just that one banner in there is way better way to monetize. And the other thing is, once I actually start really charging money from people, suddenly under completely different obligations. So in the game, if you go into, there's a button called support feedback that leads to a swanky website I built with a support board and stuff. And in there it reads, hey, I'm a single developer. I'm doing this at night once my main job is done. I'm doing this for fun. I'm doing this because I want you guys to enjoy this game. And if you have any suggestions and bugs, please send them to me. And I'm getting the nicest mails from people. Like most mails open with, hey, thanks for building the game. It's a cool game. Here's everything that broke. And if you go to YouTube, you can find people taping all the glitches they found. But I think once you charge money, any kind of money, and if you start charging substantial amounts of money for guns that you couldn't get in game for free, I would feel obliged to actually deliver a product that is, bug free and actually works properly. And
so you figure, this was a learning exercise more so than you're trying to, make it supplemental income. So just getting it out there for free makes it a lot easier to, have those people give you good feedback, not angry because, hey, I spent $3 on this game and it doesn't work or it sucks, or, they know it's just a single guy developing. They know that it's kind of in a beta state, although it's, getting pretty polished now. I've seen it change a lot in the last few months as you've added the more content.
Yeah,
So
and
I would say
also,
that you're getting pretty close to a state where you could really start monetizing this well, especially with the number of users you have. Like that is a very, very large amount of users for someone who's actively not trying to make money or get them, right?
But I think that's always the way you have to do it, right? I think once you start trying to make money, you'll probably fail right away. And you have I talked to a bunch of game developers that sometimes charge up to $15, and I might only make a fraction of a cent on every single player, but that still adds up to. I'm not swimming in money here, but it's still a substantial amount of money. It's if you have one advertisement, you just get a fraction of a cent, but you get a couple of 100,000 impressions a month. That is still a lot of money. And
so are you happy with your current monetization, like with the ads and the revenue you're getting from that, or is it still just you're just happy to get anything at all, and it's kind of not really worth your time, but you're having fun doing it?
I'm not sure about the time thing because then you very quickly get into discussions how much.
Yeah, I mean, like if you can say like, oh, I'm making some money, but I'm also putting hundreds of hours a week, and the trade off there, right? Like,
yeah.
You don't need to talk about specific numbers because that's BS. But are you happy with that current ratio you're getting right now, or do you wish it was more?
I'm super happy. I mean, I can say it. I'm pretty frank about it. So right now, last month I closed with about $2,200, which is that's
really significant for ads alone.
Yeah, it's pretty good money. Obviously, you have to account for tax, and then I'm buying some art. And
you're going to lose half of that to various government agencies.
True, but at the end of the day, I'm personally asking myself, would I do the same thing if I didn't make any money? The answer is probably yes. And then you have to ask yourself, is the game actually worth a lot? Probably no. I mean, probably not. If you go to
self-deprecate, the game's actually really, really nice. Like if you want to go find it, you can go to the Windows Store right now. If you have Windows 8, search for Awesome Zombie Sniper. It looks really nice. It feels really nice.
Or snipezombies.com, right? Yeah. But at the same time, it's I'm not trying to be overly humble here or anything. It's at the end of the day, most of the assets you see are publicly available. Everyone could buy them. Copying my game would take a substantial amount of time, but there's not too much unique in there. And it's kind of on the, as far as technical advancements goes, it's a wave shooter. People have seen that a couple of times. So if I had to put if I had to put money on it, I probably would say it's probably worth like $5 if I look at other games. But I think that's fine. And as far as I'm personally concerned, as someone who's not a pro game developer, and you can see that the game breaks at constant areas and at pretty substantial areas as well. Like some of the I still have bugs in there where the gun suddenly stops reloading, so then you have to.
Yeah, that's a kind of important issue.
Yeah, and that's something I really haven't squared away yet. But for me, it's just pretty amazing to see how much you can achieve just by playing with Unity. Huge kudos to the guys behind Unity, and I had the honor of meeting them a couple of weeks ago. But that is fairly amazing how much you can achieve today, because the last game development experience I had was modding Half-Life 1, not 2. And I remember the editor and the toolkit was fairly horrible, and modding it was amazing by that time. But how far we have come in that short amount of time.
It's so hard. I remember working a Torque engine, like just not too long ago, and that seemed like it was so amazing back then. It was so easy, but compared to Unity, it's just Unity does it so much easier, above and beyond. I wish I had that back in college.
Yeah. Yeah, you're totally right. So I think that is fairly amazing, and the fact that you can make a bit of money on it is also fairly amazing, because obviously, and this is the other thing, right? If I actively tried to make a bit of money and also maybe was a bit more invested in making money, if this was my day job and I actually invested, let's say, 5 hours a day into making this game amazing and making sure that people like it, putting it out there, maybe putting it on multiple platforms, it's Unity, right? It could run on the desktop, I could sell it on the desktop, I could sell it for Linux and all those things.
You could also take all that you've learned, take all the tech you've made in the engine, and then just make a really good sequel, and then charge for that, and then direct your free players into the sequel. So in a sense, it's kind of freemium, but you're doing like The Room did on iOS recently, where The Room 2 just came out for I think $5, and The Room 1, which was a paid app, became free, and so they got millions of more new users, and then some percentage of them converted into the sequel.
Yeah, that makes it, stuff like that makes a lot of sense to me. And I, ever since I built this, I sometimes talk about the game, annoy everyone around me. But whenever I hear people say, I have the following game idea, I would really like to build it, I'm always saying, pal, build it. Just do not talk about it, just sit down and build it. Because
just do it already. I mean,
and Unity is free as well, right? Isn't that amazing that Unity is free? I don't really know the license terms, but even if you want the pro version, they have a cloud offering now that is like, I think it's $70 a month.
Yeah, it's like, and that's only for like advanced shader stuff, and most of what you need is in the free version. If you need that like high-end shader stuff, you need those high-end animation things, it's so worth the money from there. But if you're just starting out, you definitely only need the free version, and it goes to Windows 8 and Windows for free, and I think even the basic version to the other platforms. But on Windows, I think you get the Pro features for free, which is nice.
Yeah, and you also get the release for Android for free. You don't get release for iOS because, Apple being Apple, you don't get to do that for free. I think the license terms for PlayStation and Nintendo Wii are also pretty horrible.
Yeah, that's pretty much a case per case basis.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited about the Xbox One thing, that indie publishing is there. And I keep getting mails about people who want me to implement controls for the Xbox controller or really any kind of gamepad. So I'm dreaming about putting it on Xbox once the Xbox team actually tells us.
That's a good exercise to go through, and then you have that kind of ready in your engine. You're kind of building up a toolkit of stuff that you'll have for future games you make. Because if you make a good function to handle controller input, you can use that same code in whatever other projects you make in the future in Unity.
Yeah, and do you remember the Ouya project that is still around?
Yeah, I have an Ouya game actually. I had one of the launch titles.
Yeah, so these guys sent me a console for free and were like, "Hey, here's a console. Don't you want to build your game for Ouya?" Which I'm actually probably going to do. I've been saying that for weeks now, but I'm actually really, really probably going to do it. So how far you can get with like, everyone knows that you can get pretty far with like a simple application. But the matter of the fact is that because apps are rarely as creative as games. If you think about apps, people are sometimes thinking, how about another to-do app, or I don't know what, a calculator, or maybe I'm just lacking imagination here. But
a person gets one to-do list, one calendar app, one exercise app, but they'll have dozens of games on their device. So it's kind of a built-in nature of people want lots of different kinds of games and are always open to new game experiences.
Yeah, I just feel like if you think about maybe I'm lacking imagination here and saying something really, really stupid, but to me, it just personally feels like building another game people will enjoy at the end is easier than building another app that people will enjoy, because it's like a toolkit, right? There are just so many tools people carry around at home. But if you go into the creative space and you're building something that is in any way creative, and games certainly are super creative, there really aren't that many limits. And you're absolutely free to just invent whatever you want, as long as it's fun, right?
Absolutely. Getting back into talking about your community, though, you have a really large number of users, and you talked about how you have that support forum and people are giving you feedback and being super nice. Besides providing that space, like how did you foster that community growth or that feedback cycle?
I didn't. And at this point, I wouldn't say that people are talking to each other. So
you said
people
like
are talking
it's mostly
to
a one-way communication from them to you. Like they're not talking to each other about the game.
Yeah, no, they're not really. So there are a bunch of people on YouTube, not a bunch, that is overstatement, but there are a few people on YouTube that recorded themselves and their high scores and how they're pretty good at the game, how they're, exploiting some of the glitches. So that is a thing. But as far as talking to me goes, I just completely transparently put my personal email address into the game, and there's a feedback button. And if you press it, I tell the tiny story of, hey, I'm Felix, I'm building this for fun. Obviously, I'm a one-man army, but if you have any ideas or run into anything, just please send me a mail. And that is probably the most gratifying thing I did in my life. Like
I did
every
the same thing
single
in my
day.
game, and you just get amazing messages from people. Like every now and then you'll get some person who's whining for no particular reason, but most of the time people are pretty cool.
Yeah, and I personally, I never did this. So maybe just people around me are better than I am, but I never knew that people are sitting down and sending thank you messages to game developers. Yesterday I got a mail, and this sounds like the type of stuff I always think they made up in talk shows, but yesterday I got a mail from, hey, I'm a 68-year-old veteran and retiree. I really enjoy your game. I really enjoy the sniper rifle. How about implementing another sniper rifle? I have the following idea. And it's adorable because most of the time you get messages from people who don't really know game development and have like cute ideas like, how about you have, this is actually a real quote, how about you invent this spider thing that comes out of the ground, and then when you kill it, it has more spiders, and those spiders build like tiny things and eventually become into zombies. Like,
well, actually,
the type
that
of
does
ideas.
sound pretty cool. You should probably do that. It just might be a little bit hard. That might take you, a couple more months to develop, but that doesn't sound like a bad idea.
No, but it's that is super gratifying. That is actually the coolest part about it, just seeing that people enjoy the stuff you wrote. And I think that is actually more gratifying than some of the money. Questioning my own statement here, but it's certainly super, super gratifying.
So what would you say is like the most positive feedback you got? Like, is there a letter besides that, like the one veteran like stands out to was particularly inspiring or good, or it's just kind of overall positive?
I'm not sure that there's like an individual one that stands out. It's super nice to every now and get a message by guys who enjoy your game enough to sit down and write down the issues they encountered and actually enjoy your game despite the issues. Because the other thing you have to consider is that obviously the game is designed to not have issues. There are not that many in there that are expected to occur.
Yeah, you don't want bugs.
Yeah, right. But most of the bugs are actually somewhere pretty deep in the code, and only occur if you have a very special configuration of computer. And it's so, for instance, the thing where the gun doesn't reload. I have seen it in a video. I never experienced it myself. I don't really know how that happens. And as far as computer code goes,
there's no real reason why the gun shouldn't reload.
It's one of those
But
bugs where you can't replicate it yourself, so it's impossible to fix until you can.
yeah, right. And just having people encounter these issues, which I would find super frustrating, and then be like, you know what, this is a cute game. I'm going to send this guy a mail and A, thank him, and then B, there was one guy who went into great. So, for instance, the veteran, right? He as well found some issues, and so. Being 68, I have huge respect for him playing games at all, but apparently he had some issues with attaching the screenshots, and he sent me multiple mails trying to send me these screenshots. And so he clearly invested more than just 10 minutes of his life into helping me, and that is, I don't know, maybe I'm just a pretty cynical person, but to me that sounds amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like people are nice. They like game developers, and they specifically like indie developers. It's kind of a good marketing point to call your game indie. People like that experience of having personal ownership to a product, and they feel like, oh, I talked to this guy, I helped him out. It's and they feel like they kind of own that game in part, and that's really good. If as a developer you want that really badly, because that person's going to go out and tell all their friends about the game. They're going to say, oh yeah, I even emailed this guy. His name's Felix. He, just makes it after his day job, and it's a great way to market yourself.
Yeah, but I also think, to be honest, we indies kind of deserve it. Because after all, this is a different game than, and I say game here not as the game we play, but a game as an industry. This is a different thing than, we're not playing in the same league as Electronic Arts, right?
Yeah, you're not trying to maximize your profit potential. You're not thinking it as a cash machine and going in a project base. And not that that's, I think, inherently evil or wrong. Like you talked about how you were not necessarily fond of the direction of the industry right now, and I might argue those points in another show, but it's still nice to have that indie community doing something different than everyone else is doing, and focusing on games as art, and focusing on games for fun, both for the people playing and the developer making them.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty important that we have both things. Because obviously, let's be honest here, I will never write Battlefield 4. I will also never build Skyrim. Those things, or GTA 5, for some things you
never,
just
man. You never know what's going to happen. Unity version 7 is going to make that like really easy. You just click a button and it procedurally level designs the entire game mechanics.
I don't know. Did you see once on the internet? I saw this thing where someone just printed all the books from Skyrim and bounded them together, and that alone was a majestic house.
I would pay serious money for that. That's a really good idea.
But I mean, full disclosure: if any of the listeners to the show suddenly have like 200 million lying around and are wanting to invest it into a game, I'm the first to raise the hand. As if anyone gives me the opportunity to sell out and become a game director for a multi-million-dollar title, I'm gonna I'm gonna raise both hands. But at the moment, I think it's nice to just build something that is not built for the purpose of making money, but for the purpose of, and together as a family, enjoying to shoot zombies in the face.
Very cool. So what are you going to do next with the game? Like, are you just going to continue iterating on it? Do you have some big plans for future project or sequel?
Not really sequel right now. So what I want to do, it's if you have so many players and you're not used to having many players, it's very hard to say goodbye to a project and take on a new one. So what I'm probably going to do for quite some time is just improving on it gradually, putting out new levels, maybe putting on new zombies. I have art lying around. I mentioned it earlier in the show. I have some art lying around for a beautiful winter scenery. I have another beautiful forest scenery that is slightly different, has a slightly different look. And I also what is already done is a bigger zombie, like maybe a boss zombie, and then also some game mechanics, maybe multiple weapons. I have amazing explosions lying around right now. You can only shoot, nothing is really exploding. There are just so many ways. With a game as simple as mine, there are so many ways extending upon it. I know that many indies take on the challenge of writing an engaging story, which I find very, very respectable and beautiful. And that's probably the type of game where putting out additional titles is something that feels more natural. In my case, I don't really feel like I'm done with this. This to me still feels like a work in progress. So once I reach a stage where I think that adding another level wouldn't really change anything, that's probably the point where I want to do something else.
Very cool. I mean, it sounds like you'll be developing it for a long time because as long as people are playing it, and it seems like a lot of people are playing it, it can take over your life. Heed my wording.
Speaking from experience there,
Yeah, I
Tobiah.
mean, like my biggest game, Blast Monkeys, was a weekend project experiment that we put out there, and it ended up ruling our lives for the last 3 years now.
Yeah, it seems like that happens every now and then.
Yeah, it's actually not as uncommon, actually, because games build up over time. It's not like you put it out there and they're finished and awesome and they get millions of downloads and then you're done with it. Development doesn't work that way anymore. People want to have that growth experience. People, get out and it's not quite as polished. There's maybe a few problems or not every feature you want is in, and you just update it over time. And that's how the best indie games are. I mean, look at Minecraft. That didn't start off as not released it and then was huge. That took many months to build up in popularity.
Yeah, I mean, did they? It's a long time since I updated my Minecraft. Do they even have like the 1 in the version right now? Or are they still 0 point something?
No, they had the launch of it. It was like, when did they have a launch? It was a while ago at this point, but it was like a year after it had been like first released, I think.
And they're still
like
adding
huge
stuff,
party
right?
stuff where they would hit 1.0.
The other day I saw that they have apparently slime blocks that propel you into the air.
They're now at
something
1.8,
like that.
I believe, is the latest version. I run a server just for some friends in my spare time, which means I haven't been playing it in the last few months. But so it's like, oh, another update? There's cool stuff. I'm like motivated to just reset my world every month.
Yeah, so that is the thing. I totally agree. It's slightly different now, but it's also, I think, more friendly to people like us, because obviously, like, every single major update I do is followed by a bunch of minor updates, which have no other job but to fix all the stuff I broke in the major update. And I think I'm not alone in that many people put out a major update to whatever they did, a new level or something else, and then there's a whole bunch of just fixing updates that don't really add new content. It's the same game, less errors than before.
Random question. What's your turnaround time for updates? I know some people say like, oh, Android's nice because you can just update and then it's up there because Google has no type of certification or authorization, which also means that there's a lot of crap out there and some programs that I wouldn't necessarily trust. But you have to get approved by.
It's not instant. It's not instant. But I gotta say, I don't really know exactly how it works. But I feel like I hit a new tier. I don't know if it's actually tiered or something, but
no, it is that if you had successful updates in the past, I believe you do get some preferential treatment.
Okay,
you're
so
generally guaranteed less than 5 days.
So my record time was 8 minutes.
8 minutes. Wow.
Yeah, so that was
that is
quick.
pretty fast right there. Like, what would you say your average? Obviously, 8 minutes can't be, common.
No, it's not the average. My average is within 10 hours though.
10 hours is still pretty quick.
Yeah, for major updates, it sometimes takes a bit longer.
That's a lot faster than I've ever heard Apple had. Like ours, at our best, was probably like 5 days, and at its worst was like over 3 weeks.
Yeah, I also got to say that if it takes those 10 hours, every now and then the review team catch stuff that I missed. So I would say that the quality assurance there maybe isn't the worst thing. To give you an example, so the way Unity is set up, it has those scenes, and basically every single scene, every level you load has to somehow contain all the code, and you have to initialize all the code. There are multiple architectures and theories on how you should handle this, but the way I'm handling this is basically that every single level is a running game on its own. It's not dependent on all the other levels. Obviously, I use the same scripts though, and I remember that I sent one update that included a new level, and while building the new level, I made some changes to the control script for the first-person shooter, and those same changes somehow didn't really make it into the other levels. So I sent the major update out, and it came back from Microsoft saying, "Hey, cool game as always, but you probably want to know that your character totally does not move in those two levels." And you might think that is something I should have caught, but I didn't, and I'm quite happy that Microsoft did. So
Yeah, it's nice that they give you that extra assurance, and they don't just say rejected. They tell you exactly why, like, oh, hey, this could be improved, and here's how you would make it better, and here's the problems on these devices.
yeah, absolutely.
So, what, like, one piece of advice would you give to a new developer who wants to start right now? Maybe they want to make a Unity game, maybe they want to make something else. Like, what bit of wisdom that you've learned in your process that you wish you knew before you started?
I'm going to quote my friend and colleague, Timothy Strimple: ship it. I don't care about the state. I don't care.
I love that advice. Pretty much every episode, I think I've said that in some form.
Yeah.
Ship early and often.
So whenever people, Timothy is one of those guys that knows a lot about cloud architecture and actually thinks that that even have a higher standard and should be less prone to bugs than games get to be. But his line is always, "I don't care, just ship it. I don't care how many errors it has. I don't care how bad you feel about what you just built. I don't care how many ideas you still have. Whatever you have right now, put a lid on it and ship it. And once you have it out there, listen to what people said and continue building upon it, right? Just because you have so many ideas left doesn't mean that you have to hold back. And certainly in my case, like, I never plan to have half a million players. I put the game out specifically for my boss and my friends to see, like a total group of maybe 6 people. So it sounds like a cheesy line, but the only way you can guarantee you to get players is by not shipping anything. If you do ship, nothing is actually guaranteed. It's possible that no one is going to play your game. It's not likely, but it's possible. But it's certainly also possible that a whole bunch of people are going to play your game. So ship it.
Excellent advice. Well, I always like to round out every episode of the show with talking about what games we've played lately, besides, the ones that we actually make. And for myself, I've been checking out a multiplayer game called Damned, which is a horror multiplayer game where some amount of players play survivors in a haunted house, and they're trying to find a way out and need to find, the key for the door, and that gets them to the next room. And then there's some simple puzzle or, maze to try and get out. And while they're doing so, there's a monster chasing them, and the monster is another player who has to build up energy and can take corporeal form and start attacking them, but can't do it at every single moment, and can trigger certain terrifying noises and other things to scare the players or lure them into a trap to kill them. It's kind of in a rough alpha beta-y state right now, but it's pretty interesting, so I was checking that out. What about you, Felix? What have you been playing?
I'm really behind. Do you really want to know?
Yeah.
Fallout 2.
That's not a bad choice. That is a very, very, very good game. That is very well regarded. Have you played it before and you're replaying it, or is it your first time through?
To be completely honest, I think the last time I played it, I was probably too young to properly understand it. But I don't know. Did you? I don't want to make free advertising here or anything, but Good Old Games, amazing website, and they had this. I don't know if you can call it sale, but they give away.
They had it for free, right?
Yeah. So I like everyone else. I really enjoy free things. So I'm playing that right now.
Yeah, it was one of those loss leaders to get you on the Good Old Games store, which I've gotten many games from. It's a great place to get older games. So Fallout 2 is, man, it had to been 90s. I don't remember exactly when it came out, but excellent RPG. Very different than the Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, the ones that came out more recently.
Which I also really enjoy, though. Fallout New Vegas.
They were very good games. They lived up to the Fallout name, but the Fallout 1 and 2 and Tactics were very different style. They were 2D and top-down and very fun. I remember playing them a bunch as a kid.
All right. Well, Tobiah, thanks for talking to me.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank you
having
very,
me, I
very
guess.
much for being on the show. If you want to find more about me, you can go to tobiahmarks.com or find me on Twitter at Tobiah Marks. Where can we find out more about you, Felix?
I would say if you want to find out more about my game, you can go to snipezombies.com. If you want to find out more about me, you can go to felixrieseberg.com, which quite frankly is a pretty boring website. As far as Twitter is concerned, you can find me at Felix Rieseberg.
Cool. If you want to find more about the show, you can go to beindynow.com where you get previous episodes, show notes, other cool stuff like that. If you have any suggestions for the show or you want to be on the show, email the show at show@beindynow.com. I said show 5 times in a row there. That was funny. But that's pretty much it. So thank you very much, Felix, for being on. And thank you guys for listening. Go out there and make some games. Ship it.
Indeed, ship it. Thank you very much.